Well, so similar to what we learned, the way the world was created, that it was created through a tzimtzum, and the purpose of the tzimtzum is in order to bring down the greater gilui in the tzimtzum, after the tzimtzum. Similarly is in Avodas Hashem. We have the Avodas Hashem, which is Lifnei HaTzimtzum. That would be serving the Eibishter with the Bechinas Ponim. Serving the Eibishter with Ponim. But that level of Ponim, which is the level of Atzilus, is not Bizman Hazeh in time of Golus, not in the time of the Beis Hamikdash. That's not common. That's not regular. The avodah now is called bebchinas ocher, acharei havaya lekeichem telechu, behind, in a way, as the avodah is mitzad biyah, is bebchinas ocher. However, that symptom that we experience today in our avodah is actually for the gilui that we get from the pnimius hanefesh to illuminate even the chitzonis hanefesh that Rebbe will explain now. Barichas. Vov. Hine kol ha'inyonim shalamaylo. All matters of above, dugmasom similar to them is gam ba'avodas neshamas Yisrael, is also in the service of the Jewish souls. V'chein hu bamesh and isbaer li'il shalidei hatzimtzum nimshach hagilu. The same thing is in this that was explained before, that through the tzimtzum we get gilui. The gilui is drawn down through the tzimtzum. See this in Avodas Hashem. Through the tzimtzum and Avodas Hashem that the person experiences, he brings down the revelation. But Inyan who the idea is hine klolus ha'avodah, generally speaking, the service to Hashem mischalekes can be divided up in two categories. Beha avodah shebibchinas ponim, serving the Eibishter in a way of panim, with the face. V'avodah shebibchinas ocher, or serving the Eibishter, you're not with your face, but with your back. The difference between serving with the face, that means there is all the person's senses, elevated senses. That means you serve the Eibishter with understanding, with seeing, with all of the higher levels. That is serving with the level of panim, like the face. Serving with the ocher means you're following, but it's not utilizing the person themselves, their koiches. That's serving the Eibishter, just following without involving the person's level. He's not bringing down his pnimis and avodah. Let's look inside. The difference between serving the Eibishter with in a way of ponim or in a way of acher b'klolus, generally who bedugmas achiluk kipshutei, that is similar to the literal difference shebein ponim v'acher, what we say, the face and the back. Shebechlolus hu inyan ha'oiref. Back, generally we call it, that's called the neck, the back. You have the face and you have the neck. The hine haponim, for behold, ponim asher nikra came b'shem ponim. Why do we call it with the name? We call it face. Hu mishum de boy nisgale hapnimius, because in the face it's revealed, the inner comes through the face. V'chein boy nimtsoyim hachushim bigoli. Also, the senses are openly in the face. The sense of seeing is in the eyes. The sense of hearing, in the ears. The sense of smell, in the nose. Hadibur, speech is bepeh. These are all in the face. So first, in the face is the expression of the inner, and also all the senses of the person are expressed in the face. That would mean a kind of avodah which involves all the levels, expressions, and advantages of the soul, all the chushim and the pnimius. As opposed to the back, when we talk about b'ha'irif in the neck, over there the vitality is hidden, is obscure. So similar to this, we'll understand also above when we talk about the difference between lifnei hatzimtzum and acharat tzimtzum, that lifnei hatzimtzum is the face, acharat tzimtzum is the back. The difference between the oil that is before the restriction and after the restriction, what's the difference in the light? One is before the restriction is panim, and then after the restriction is ocher. Motion is bayar ill, as we explained earlier, sha'oir anim shachali dei hatzimtzum, that the oil which extends through the tzimtzum, is not compared, and it's not similar to the oir lifnei hatzimtzum, to the oir. This is panim, this is acher, not comparable. And the reason is kimekiv on sham shachose, who al yidei hefsek hatzimtzum, since the oir la'achar hatzimtzum is drawn down through the interruption of the tzimtzum. And this tzimtzum was in a way that the first original light was removed totally, and you had to bring down a new kab v'chut, not diminish the light, but to bring down a new ha'ore. So the light that extends through this tzimtzum is, in a way, it's something new. It's an chodesh. As we said earlier, from the teaching of the Maggid of Mezrich, that the pasuk says, "Vayhi oir chodesh v'loy vayhi chen," that Torah writes many times by creation, it was so, like the Eibishter said. And here it says, "Vayemer Elokim yehi oir," and it says, "Vahi oir," and not "Vahi chen," because it was taken not the same oir. It's "Vahi oir" and "Nu oir." The "Vahi oir chodosh," "Veloy Vahi chen," who the "Vayemer Elokim." It's not the oir "Vayemer Elokim yehi oir." That's not what happened. That's why it can't say chen, because it's not. It was "Vahi oir" and "Nu light." Ad ha'oir shel acharat tzimtzum. Gabe lifnei hatzimtzum. To such an extent, they're not comparable. The light of acharat tzimtzum to lifnei tzimtzum, that the oir that is la'acharat tzimtzum, when you measure it legabe lifnei hatzimtzum, compare it to the light lifnei hatzimtzum, hu be'erech ha'ocher legabe ponim. So that's similar to the back relative to the face. The difference, as we said, the difference of light and chayis and senses in the face, and the back has nothing. So now we'll go back to the avodah. Balderech ze avodah shebebchinas ocher. Agabe ha'avodah shebebchinas ponim. When we have a service which is only in the level of the back, and we want to compare this to the avodah, to a service to the Eibishter, which is a b'chinas ponim, which is in a way as ponim. She'eino berach ze lo ze, that they're not comparable one to another. Omnom, afal pikein, but yet still, hine al derech shenizbaer li'il be'inyan hatzimtzum, similar to what was explained earlier in the idea of the tzimtzum, and the Rebbe explained that after the tzimtzum, later on you are mamshich, even the oir habligvul shalifnei tzimtzum shalidei hatzimtzum nimshach gam la'achar hatzimtzum ha'oir shalifnei hatzimtzum, that through the tzimtzum you draw down, even after the tzimtzum, you draw down the oir that was there before the tzimtzum, and not just part of the vafilu, beginas oir habligvul. Even the oir habligvul shalifnei hatzimtzum comes down in the oir shalachar hatzimtzum. Al derech zehu gam kein ba'avodos. Similarly, is also in the service of Hashem. Shagam be'ofen ha'avodah shebebchinas ocher. That also in the avodah, which is in the level of ocher, meir b'chinas aponim, but it shines the level of ponim. As the Rebbe will explain that while we can only at certain stages now only serve the Eibishter with the Bechinas Ocher, which means without the inner qualities of the soul, because we don't have that openly. Yet, in the background, in essence, we also have that level of ponim. Even when we do and we're forced to do a mitzvah, when we do it, it's still considered, when he says roitzim, that is his premise, as we'll explain. The same thing in this kind of way, through the tzimtzum, you get the higher level, the lifnei hatzimtzum, the level of pnimius, the level of ponim b'neshamas v'toira, in souls and Torah, Kfishi is Boyle Kamana, will be explained later on. So now, going to explain the Avodah, how in the Avodah of Bechinas Ocher, we're going to have the Avodah of Pnimis. First, to explain what is the Avodah of Bechinas Ponim. The Avodah of Bechinas Ponim is Avodah of Atzilus. Avodah Ocher, that's Bia, Zayin. Inyan, who to explain this idea, the avodah shebibchinas ponim hi bichlolus ha'avodah k'moy shehi mitzad olam ha'atzilus. When we serve in a way of ponim, generally speaking, that means we're serving Hashem from the level of Atzilus. In Atzilus, from the perspective of Atzilus, if we can be in the level of Atzilus, that means we serve the Eibishter in Atzilus in a way of Ponim. And the service in a way of Ocher, that's generally speaking, it's the Avodah from the worlds of Biyah. In Biyah, we don't serve Hashem with Panim because we don't have Panim over here. We serve with Ocher. It's at Simtsum, it's Metzumtsum, it's only Biyah. Hinei Olam HaAtzilus. When we talk about the world of Atzilus, Bechlolus hu Kimoi Sheseder HaHishtalshelus Va'olamois. In generally speaking, that is the way, the order of Ishtalshelus and the world, Va'olamois, Heim Steyen Mitzad Lakus, how they're standing from the perspective of godliness. It's godliness looking at Hishtalshelus. And basically, it is godliness, and it's ponim. The Atzilus u'meloshin etzloi v'samuch. Atzilus comes from the language Atzilus means etzloi and close by him, next to him, which means that it's godly, it's next to Hashem. Ukedisu bepardis, as it says, as we find the pardis, v'nikra oilam ha'agdus. It's called the world of unity. Over there is godliness prevails, and therefore everything unites in the way of Agdus, and the Iris and the Kalim, the lights and the vessels of godliness all become one. They unite over there. The Iyu v'chayoyi v'garmoyi. He, Hashem, with his chayis, with the iris, with the energy, and with the kelim become one, which means the iris of Atzilus, the kelim of Atzilus, with the Eberster, with Ihu, are all one. This is a world of Achdus. So, as we find in the introduction of Tikkun Zohar. On the other hand, the Olam is Biyah, the worlds of Bri, Tziri Asiya, Nikroim Almo Di Proida. They're called worlds of separation. They're separate from Hashem. They're not Achdus. They're not united with you. World of the Proida. As the Pasuk says, Misham Yipareid, when it talks after creation, how the rivers separated, those represent the separation as they've parted from Eve, and there is this, not unity anymore. Shezehu heipech ma'olam ha'achdus atzilus. This is the opposite from the world of unity of Atzilus. Here there is pirud, there is separation. So these these are the two types of the avodah. The avodah mitzat Atzilus, the neshamas that serve the Eberster with being in the level of Atzilus will be serving the Eberster in a way of Panim. But the neshamas that serve the Eberster with Biyah serve the Eberster with Ocher. Derech zem, and Beizefane Havoida, the Panim Ocher. Similarly is the two types of service of Panim and Ocher. The Ba'atzilus Havoida hi b'bchinas Panim. In Atzilus, the Avodah is in a way of Panim. Shalakus hu begilui. Meaning the person that serves the Eibishter openly sees godliness. He's serving the Eibishter with an open realization of godliness. He's upon him. He's serving the Eibishter with the upon him. But in the worlds of Bri Tzirasiya, he serves the Eibishter in a way just like with the back, without all the senses, without all the levels, the high levels. The Hanhog Shebebiyahu, the conduct in the worlds of Biyabri Tzirasiya, who bebchinas, it's in level, it says the Pasik, Acharei Havaya Lekeichem Telechu, you follow after. Acharei is the back. Behind Hashem you go, not with your face, but with your back, because you're just following. You don't have invested in it all of your panim, all of your choshim. Ubelishoyin hayudua, to use the language, the known language, as we say, shebibiyah, that in the world of biyah, olam is heim bipshitus. The worlds, the hishtalshlus, that's obvious. We say, belakusu bischatshus. But godliness is new. That's something that's novel, godliness, because what it is in Biyah is world. That's what we see. That's the obvious. Shezo b'chinas ocher. That is the level of ocher. Because in Atzilus it's the reverse. Over there, Elakus is bipshitus, and the world is bischatshus. That's why the mitzad, the world of Atzilus, it's the world is Achdus, it's the level of Panim. But over here in Biyah, it's all about Oilamais, and godliness is something more novel. So, this is the level of Ocher, that godliness is something which is novel. Shalakusu b'chinas hela, that godliness is hell. The Rebbe will bring out further in the Mamer that notwithstanding that the Avodah now seems to be in a way of Tzimtzum, of Helem, of Ocher, but yet, as the Rebbe says, that still uh, we also have the level of Pnimius come through in our Avodah, in the Avodah Mitzad Biyah, we also get the higher level, the level of Panim as well. But first, the Rebbe says here we're talking about the difference between Acher and Panim is between serving the Eberster Mitzad Atzilus or serving the Eberster Mitzad Biyah. And the Rebbe says in time-wise, this is the difference, the way we serve the Eberster now and the way we will serve the Eberster in the future to come. Now we're serving Bebechinas Acher, Acher Havai Lekechem. But when Mashiach comes in the future, we'll serve the Eberster Bebechinas Panim. And it's also the difference, the way we served the Eberster during the time that there was a Beis HaMikdash was also in a level of Panim. The Rebbe says in the note Tezayin, Obechlolus, this is the other part of the Fabrengen, as we discussed in the beginning. That was the Shabbos Fabrengen, so they're adding in the extras that the Rebbe spoke then, in addition to the Maimer that the Rebbe, they printed from, where the Rebbe spoke on Motzei Shabbos of Yud Shvat. Ubeklolus, generally speaking, Bechinas Ocher Uponim de Gedusha, the level of Ocher Uponim de Gedusha, that we said Atzilus and Biyah, the Aveda Ugam Achiluk, Sheben Zman Hagolus Lila Osid Love. This is also the difference between the Aveda during the time of Golus and the future to come. And Rebbe adds, Ulizman Shebeis Hamikdash Hoyakayim, and to the time the Beis Hamikdash wasn't existent, was also the level of Panim versus Golus. Now we have the level of Ocher. Kimavuer b'Torah Divra Maschil Zocher es asher osu l'cha Amalek. In that Maimer in Torah, the Alter Rebbe discusses that the Bisman HaGolus Nemar Moche Emche es Zecher Amalek Goimer Milchama L'Hashem B'Amalek. That during Golus we have to deal with Amalek. There is Amalek over there. And either the Eberster says, I will erase Amalek, or the Eberster wages war with Amalek. But we have to deal with Amalek, we have to deal, because now in the level of Ocher, Amalek has a handle, a grab, hold, and therefore we have to erase him, because since our Avodah is in a level of Ocher, we have to get rid of Amalek. Ki avodah sa'odom mitzad atzmai, hi be'oifun de'achrei havaya lekeichem teilechu. The person's avodah alone, if not for mochei emcha, what the Eibishter does on our own, we're in a way de'achrei havaya lekeichem teilechu, bebechinas ocher bilvad v'lochein efsher liyes oz ha'is nagdus de'amolek. Then we can have the opposition of Amalek, because we are only in a level of Acharei. As it was in the first time. The Yidden were in a level of Acher. When the Yidden left Mitzrayim, they were in a level of Acher. So they had to deal with an Amalek. Yisrael nimtzu b'midbar. So the Yidden were in Midbar. Being in the Midbar is the level of Acher. She'inyan ha-midbar hu b'chinas Acher. It's the idea of Acher. That's the avodah going in the midbar. You're in the level of Acher. Kamesha Kosu, like the pasuk says, Lech teich acharai b'midbar. Going acharai is the level of Acher in the midbar that didn't follow the Eberster in the level of Acher. So because they were in the midbar, they were in a level of Acher. Hine mishum zeh, vayizane b'cho kol hanecha sholim acharecha. So Amalek came, and all those that were stumbling, so he started up at vayizane b'cho, and that's why we had to deal with Amalek. And that's why in the time of Golus, we also, when we're in the level of Achere, like they were then in the desert, we have to deal with Amalek, and the Eibster is Mochayem Chezecher Amalek, but we have to deal with Amalek. V'zeu gam kim b'chinas parei, not only when they went out of Mitzrayim, but in Mitzrayim is also the level of when there is a level of Ocher, because the level of parei, and that's when we have the problems, because parei is also like we say by the desert, but we also have the level of Ocher as in the level of Pare. The Pare is Oisius Ha-Oiref. The level letters of Pare is the same as the back, Ha-Oiref. So that's also on the level of Ocher. Valderech Sha'amolik, who Oisius Molik. Uh, so just like Amalek is the letter Molak, is Paris Oirif. It's also Amalek has the letter Molak. Molak, we say by the bird that you slit the back, memul orpoi, so it's also connected to back. These are all Sayamolik, Saypare, and that means that in the Golus and the under Pare, it's all the level of Acher, and we have to deal with the various different distractions. The Pasuk says you should do the malika, the sliding of the head from the back. So we see the level of molak to the back connection. So now, Ba'idei ha-milchom ba'amolik, when we wage war with Amalek, with these distractions, shehu inyan ha'avodah bebchinas achrei havaya gomer, which is the avodah of achrei Hashem, because we can only follow Hashem, and we have to wage the war against all the uh, Paris and the Amaleks. Eventually, this brings us to the Beis Hamikdash, but not just erasing a mole, but we also have the introduction, as we know, the three mitzvahs before the building that the Eden was Nitztave, Yisrael, when they came to Eretz Yisrael. So after first fulfilling the mitzvah of Minui Melech to appoint a king, so then we have Ulahachri Zare Shel Amalek, which is the fight, the Acharei Hashem, that to serve the Eibishter in a way of Acharei. And then you get a Beis Hamikdash. Ki yidu ba'gimel mitzvahs shenitztavu b'knisosom la'aretz. As known in the three mitzvahs that the Yidden were commanded as they were entering Eretz Yisrael, shetzorich liyas hakdomas minu melech l'mchias Amalek. You first have to appoint a king before you can do the second step, is erasing Amalek. And after you have the minui melech and you erase Amalek, so then boying the mitzvahs binya Beis Hamikdash, then we come to the fulfillment of the mitzvah of building the Beis Hamikdash as ha'avodah hi b'bchinas ponim. Then in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, the avodah is in the way of ponim. Well, then Nemar, And but this it says, "V'hoyo b'honiach Hashem elekecha l'cha mikol oivecha m'seviv gomer," that once Hashem leaves you, uh, and you relax from all the enemies that want to around you, from the Amalekites and the Pares. So Oz Yiyeh, then after the Eberster is Moche Emche, like we learned in the time of Golus, over there we say Avodah de Moche Timcha, that the Yid will, not the Eberster will do it for you. Adam Atzmai Ezeker Amalek, the person himself will erase the remembrance of Amalek Shebechlolus Yiyazeh Bebinyan Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi. Generally, this will be in the building of the third Beis Hamikdash. Aval Ad Oz, but till the time of the third Beis Hamikdash, we are in Golus. We're in the level of Ocher. Befrat Bisman HaGolus. Till then, meaning even, I guess, even during the first Beis Hamikdash, the earlier Beis Hamikdash, still not at the same level of uh, the way it's going to be. Also love it. But until then, Befrat Bisman HaGolus, so we were serving the Eberst in the way of Ocher. So basically what we said that Mitzad Atzilus is Ponim and Bia is Ocher, the Rebbe explains here that this is really the Avodah in the time of Golus, and the now we're serving that way and in preparation to the Binyan Beis Hamikdash, in which we will serve the Eberster B'Bchinas Ponim. So what are we saying over here? That the Tzimtzum is for the Gilui, that the uh, Avodah, even though it's in the level of Ocher, this is the common Avodah today, Bisman HaGolus, still we have infused in here also the level of B'chinas Ponim. So here comes the lesson, the Hein Emes Shahat Torah Al Harayv Tidaber. It's true, the Torah talks by the majority. Most people today serve the Eberster mitzad biyah, not mitzad atzilus. They don't have the level of panim. V'havodah, so what is the avodah? He bebchinas achrei havai lekechem teleichu. That is to go in the level of achrei, in the level of behind the teleichu. And even during the exceptional time, we know there's a certain meditation at a level during the davening that the person reaches the level of ponim in his avodah satfila, in ava betanugim, in his reflections, but still it's in a level of acher. Rebbe explains in the note over here in Ois Yudzayin, Begam kishemizboy len bepnimis oilemis ubepnimis hamneshama, even when his reflection is in the inner of the world and in the inner of the soul, so that he's not only in the external, in the achorayim, the ocher of the world, in the el elon b'pshitus and el kuz b'schachus, but he reflects in the inner of the olamais and neshamas kimvur b'terayir. Kol makoim avedose hi b'bchinas ocher bilvad. That's still in the level of Acher. You don't really reach the level of Panim. Notwithstanding that his mizbeinus is the Pnimius. The Ha'avoida b'bchinas Ava b'tanugim, because when to get the level of Ava b'tanugim, which would be the real, a love with the light, a reflection that will bring him to a love of the light, Amitis b'chinas Pnimius, which is the real idea of Pnimius, in Yona Kabbalah Schad Mein Elam Haba, that's receiving the reward Mein Elam Haba. Va'achshav Havoida Hi hayom la'asoisam bilvad. Now it's only about doing alone. It's not getting schar, not enjoying, not tainug, not ponim. It's la'asoisam. Ve'rak b'tzadikim. It's only with regards to the rights. Libam cholol b'kirbam. They reach the level that their heart is hollow with inside. They don't have the Yetzer Hara. Ve'etzlom hu hasoras habegodim atzoim legamri. By these tzaddikim, they remove those unclean, those repugnant garments. They totally removed it. They don't have those garments anymore. These tzaddikim, shemo yasim ma'od b'tanuge olam hazeh. They totally despise all of the delights of this world. And they serve the Eibishter in a way of a love of delights. For them, they're also now upon him. So there is shaykhs for those tzaddikim who have totally killed the Yetzer Hara, cholol b'kirbam, and they despise worldly matter. They can have Abba B'Tanugim, they have level upon him. But we're talking about majority of people. It's majority is acharei. We're bedugmas havoida shahoyo lifnei matan Torah. That's like it was before matan Torah, which says lechtech acharei b'midbar k'meshukos lechtech acharei b'midbar. So this is really the avoida now before leosid lovei. And the Rebbe Ha'ara Yudches says, look, Rei Ha'ara Tezayin, in which he discussed that the two avodas upon him, the Acher, is also that Lifnei Matan Torah is the level of Acher relative to the level upon him, which was with the building of the Beis Hamikdash, as discussed there. Okay, well, now the Rebbe is going to shift gears, which is, this is the way the Avodah is, but there is still the Tzimtzum, the fact that we have the Acher is in order to be able to bring down the level of Ponim, and that can be done by a person realizing that even in his struggles and even when he fails, he still has that neshama, and that brings out that higher level of ponim in his avodah, which is in a level of acher. In order for the avodah in the level of acher should be able to sustain. It's a challenge when you don't see it, you're just serving the Eibishter without the pnimi, is just following the tifel pool also, and that it should accomplish what it needs to accomplish. The avodah tzorich nesinas koyach lozeh. It needs to give power for this to be able to maintain and stay strong when you're serving the Eibishter with the level of Acher. How do you do that? Al Yidei Sheyizboinen, by reflecting Shemitzad Pnimius Nafshu Pnimius Levavi, that from the perspectives of the inner of his soul and the inner of his heart, Utamid B'Mchinas Ponim, he's always in level upon him. You reflect that you really put it, even while really the avodah is acher, you really put it. Ksag din Rambam hayadua, as the known ruling of the Rambam. B'hilchos Gerushin Seif Pedig Beis, in the laws of Gerushin Seif Pedig Beis. So over there, the Rambam says when a person doesn't want to give a get, and a get has to be done with consent, the husband must consent to the get, but if he doesn't want to, so basically will force him until he'll say that I want. How does that help? So the Rambam explains that in the inside, a person wants to do what the Eibishter wants, and therefore when he says that I want, that's not his want, even though he thinks that he doesn't want at the time, and it's only you forcing him, but that's really his inner will. So say over there, the Kol Echad Vechad Mi Yisrael, that each and every one of the Jewish people base and Maimad Matzav Seyiyah, no, it doesn't matter in whatever condition they may be. Reitzu Lasis Kol HaMitzvahs, wishes, wants to do all the mitzvahs, ulisrachik min avedis, and to stay away from avedis. But Yitzra who should talk for it's the Yetzer, his inclination that grabs hold of him, forces him. So reflect on that, that really you want to do what Hashem wants. And also you should reflect in the fact even when a person sins, the neshama is still with him, as it says in the Tanya, so that the neshama is always stays connected. Since the inner of his soul is a mamish, a part of Hashem. So this is something that the person needs to reflect on in order to help him to stay strong in his level of serving the Eibishter in a way of so but through this reflection on the truth of his soul, and as his constant always connected Hashem, even though that from the perspective of his condition is skafia, he's still in the level of subdue, meaning he has to battle and he has to force himself. He hasn't yet reached the level to turn himself around, that the darkness turns to light and the bitter to sweet. He's still struggling. He hasn't changed himself around. He has all those temptations. When he can turn himself around, then there's entire tzimtzum bottle and the other side. So you don't need to bring down in the tzimtzum. Then there's no tzimtzum, there's no leumazeh, because he's on a level of his hapcha. But we're trying to bring down within his level of serving with Bechinas Ocher, the level of higher in Bekomokim Yeshloi, he still gets Maizboinenus, Shebepnim Yis Nafshi Vilibai, from the reflecting which is in the inner of his soul and the heart, Hu Bechinas Ponim, which is the level of Ponim, that's the reflection he gets, and it's Sinas Koyach, he gets the power given, and a shine and a flow, ad lahashpa gluya, until there is a very revealed influence and impact from that reflection in his struggle, in his avodah b'chinas acher. Also, as it pertains to the externality of his soul, acher de nafshay, in his service of following Hashem in the level of acher. In the avodah b'chinas acher, he gets the level that upon him to shine and to help him, so that the pnimius impacts the chitzonius nafshe. To the extent that this impacts also his thought, speech, and action. So together with the fact, impacts means that he does the things right, but more than that, he does it with the inner energy that comes from the level of his meditation, from the level of ponim. Together with the fact that these matters are done bepoil, that he overcomes all the struggles through this meditation. The main thing is to do, the main thing, and that's the koyach that he gets to do what he needs to do, is from the pnimis. Shal Yidei HaHizbarinus, through having that shine from the inner of his soul that comes through the reflections from the Yesh Lo Bazeh. So then when he does, it's not just doing, does it with a passion, with an energy. In addition to the actual doing, Gam Chayis Uni'imus, he has an energy, a vitality, and a sweetness. To the extent he actually has delight in the avodah. So this is coming from the panimius hanefesh to the chitzonius, from the ponim to the acher. Commotion is by Lil Rambam, and as explained earlier from the Rambam, the avshik even though you have to force him. But when I says I want, this is what he really wants. So we're actually, this is not just a game that he says he wants, but he doesn't want. We're saying the Torah says that he has to, this is his will. And we're saying that this is actually his will. And when you have to do it, even though you're forced to do it, how is that your will? So mitzad oras panimius nafshay shabo begilu yupelas gamal chitzonius nafshay. That is the array from the inner of the soul that comes openly and impacts also the externality of his soul. We get that from the pnimis and nefesh to the chitzonius, from the ponim to the acha. It says in the note you test the gam ato bisman hagolus, so that also now, the time of exile, nimshach etzel kol echad ve'echad mi Yisrael, so by each and every one of the Yidden, ha'ore u'me'ein ma'avodah shebebchinas ponim, a ray and somewhat of that service of a ponim, even though we are now in golus, which is the avodah of achad. That a kol echad ve'echad mi Yisrael omer b'chol yom, each and every one of the Yidden says every day, v'havta Hashem l'kecha b'chol avavcha u'b'chol nafshecha b'chol meidecha. This saying, loving Hashem with all your heart, all your soul, and all your being, that's a level of serving the Eibishter with level of ponim. This means serving with ponim, and we're doing it today. Even generally, this Aveda is but he does it in a way of ponim, through that reflection of Chinas ponim. This level of ponim shines also in the avodah, which on its own is a level of acher, but we bring down the ponim into the acher. That means that the tzimtzum is also getting this gilui, that the gilui from ponim comes down into the avodah. So now we discuss the level of that the tzimtzum is gilui, the way it is mainly in the siluk ha'er, the tzimtzum harishon, and we're also talking about in avodah sa'adam how the tzimtzum, the level of acher, gets the gilui of the level of panim, and now in Oisches the Rebbe will discuss also how it is in the neshamas that the neshamas from the level of tzimtzum, the neshamas that on the level of tzimtzum also get the gilui from the higher levels, as the Rebbe will continue to explain in Ois Ches.